welcome. I am Cyril Stober. Nigeria's foreign policy objectives revolve around its national interests and the promotion of African unity and integration. And being part of the larger global society, Nigeria also commits to the promotion and consolidation of universal peace, mutual respect among nations, respect for international law, and the promotion of a just world economic order. Now, Nigeria is considered the giant of Africa and the leader of the black world. But like all highly visible entities, it has often come under the scrutiny of the international community for diverse reasons. The Buhari administration, now in its second tenure, continues to articulate and execute foreign policies consistent with its social contract with the Nigerian people. Now that's the focus of our program today as I sit down with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyeama. Minister, thanks for joining us on One-on-One.
Thank you for having me.
Right. In the past, it was quite easy to say that Africa is the centerpiece of Nigeria's foreign policy. Does that still hold?
No, I would say the world is the centerpiece of Nigeria's foreign policy, not just Africa. So, of course, Africa is extremely important because we are in Africa. And the biggest country on the continent, we have a special duty and role to play in Africa. So, so in a sense, yes, you know, Africa is physically the centerpiece of our foreign policy, but we are also playing in the global gallery.
All right. Well, at some point in time, Nigeria had issues. It's talking about its image in the international community. How has it been under the Buhari administration?
I mean, it's been good, really. To be honest, we have excellent relations with all the countries. You know, I always, you know, point this out as an achievement. Although it doesn't, you know, some people might be a bit cynical about it, but it really takes quite a lot to maintain good relations with all the countries around the world, and President Muhammadu Buhari has been able to do that very, very effectively, and we see that all the time because he's you know, invited and welcomed by leaders from all over the world, all the continents. You know, invite him, engage with Nigeria, and really we don't have any country that you can, you know, say was an enemy of Nigeria's. And, you know, Mr. President is asked to mediate almost most of the crises around the world. They want to hear, you know, Mr. President's voice and have Mr. President's engagement. So, you know, there was a period in time when, you know, we were something of a pariah state, but that is certainly not the case any longer.
So when you hear talk about Nigeria being shunned by the international community on so many issues, that might not be a fair assessment.
No, it's not. I mean, I would love to hear, you know, where Nigeria is shunned. Not at all. As I said, the big countries of the world, Nigeria engages with extremely well. Mr. President was in the U.S., one of the, if not the only, sub-Saharan African leader that was invited to the U.S. under Trump, and you know, and also by Obama, and you know, the European leaders, the EU. He went to speak to the European Parliament. He was in Asia and China, and India. So really, he hasn't been shunned by anybody.
Right. Now let's talk about the people. Nigerians are considered as one of the most traveled in the world. How have they, you know, conducted themselves and been ambassadors of this country in just about everywhere in the world where you certainly would find a Nigerian?
Yes, well, well, the thing with Nigeria is that there's really diversity, not just diversity. We're not diverse just in our people, but also diverse in our behavior. And and other areas. So you know, we have the good, we have the bad, and we have the ugly in our country, as well as the beautiful. And you know, so we reflect all those outside the country. What I will say about Nigerians is that we don't pretend to be who we're not. Nigerians are Nigerians wherever they are. So we have Nigerians who excel in every field of human endeavor all around the world, and Nigerians are known for that and renowned for that. We have Nigerians who do the worst things, you know, the worst behavior all around the world, and unfortunately we're also known for that, you know. And so we have this you know, diametrically opposed you know, behavior by Nigerians around the world, and we have to deal with all that. So some people love us as Nigerians, and some people not so much.
I'm looking at the scenario, and Nigeria does have a very vibrant diasporan community, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Very vibrant, very, very vibrant. And I think it's a strength. You know, it's a real strength of Nigeria. We're known everywhere. And in fact, one of the policies of this government, President Muhammadu Buhari, is to have a kind of a seamless connection and connectivity between Nigeria at home and Nigerians in the diaspora, you know, working for the common good of Nigeria and Nigerians. You know, amongst the largest sources of investment into this country is the Nigerian diaspora. Of course, an aspiration is diaspora voting that we hope to have one day. And as you say, yeah, most traveled people. It's good, you know, it's absolutely good. We're making our impression on the world, and also it is an instrument of what I call soft power for the government, you know. Our Nigerian sportsmen, you know, and Nigerian academics, and as I said, in all the fields of endeavor, Nigerians in hospitals, in the medical field, Nigerian academics, you know, Nigerian musicians, Nollywood. So, you know, it is helping to, you know, to also promote, you know, Nigerian culture and the Nigerian brand. And I think that these are things that we can then, you know, leverage on to, in many ways, to deliver also prosperity for our country, Nigeria. Because, you know, when you think of, you know, countries, some of the countries that have, you know, really made it big, successful countries, you know, it's all about also developing that national brand, especially if you're going to have a global presence, as we aspire to. And I think that our human resources, our traveled Nigerians, as you say, are also helping to do that. And, you know, as far as Africa is concerned, you know, you talked about in your introduction about integration, you know, on the continent. And, you know, practically, in a practical sense, we're also promoting that African integration.
Well, but we do have our challenges, and like any other nation. But the question here is, how has this administration been able to engage with the international community? Let's be specific in certain areas. The economy, for instance, and seeing that the bulk of Nigeria's revenues easily come from oil. And given the vagaries, the volatile nature of oil, the politics in the international market, and all that, how has this administration been able to engage as to push forward, like we said, its social contract with the Nigerian people, while at the same time maintaining that delicate balance with being part of the global community?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's been a challenge on the economic front and engaging the international community. Of course, what we would like to do is to attract greater foreign direct investment into the country, and ideally we would like to export more. with regards to foreign direct investment, there are other things that are involved there, ease of doing business, and some of the things that this government has really been prioritizing to make it easier to do business in Nigeria, and that way attract foreign direct investment. But there are other issues that may also act as a disincentive, unfortunately, and one is the security situation, in the country. So, of course, in engaging with foreign countries in the area of, economics, trade, and so forth, we know for a fact that a lot of countries and a lot of businesses that, ordinarily would want to come and, invest here in Nigeria, hesitate sometimes because of the security situation. So this is a big challenge. And then, with regards to export, a lot of, the whole issue is access to markets, for your goods. As you pointed out, we've depended far too much on oil. But, we're developing gas and trying to promote that, although there are challenges linked to that and the climate change policy of financial institutions. But, also in market access, we also have challenges with regards in the agricultural sector, the phytosanitary challenges, the quality of our agricultural products, and then also challenges with the competitiveness of our, finished products. Power is an issue in the country, and other things that make sometimes our goods not as competitive. So, and it's a competitive world out there as far as, trade is concerned.
Now, without taking attention away from that, let's just quickly dwell a little bit more on the security situation. It is believed by certain segments of society that the security challenges are so enormous that it wouldn't be wrong, totally wrong, for Nigeria to seek help in this area. Have some of the countries, especially the ones that we so maintain close relations with, have they offered concrete help in addressing the security challenges here? Or some people still worry about ceding the nation's security architecture to foreign powers?
No, there's a lot of cooperation with a lot of these countries, and a lot of them have been extremely helpful. What do we need? We need, weapons, training, and all that, and sharing of intelligence. And we have, a lot of that with a lot of our allies and friendly countries. And we have, different arrangements, promoting that, joint exercises that we have. We have intelligence fusion unit based here in Abuja that brings together a number of countries. So we've we've benefited a lot from the goodwill of many countries, and very soon, I think starting from next week, you will all be able to announce in your TV programs that the Super Tucanos that we ordered since over 2 years ago are now here, so to again show that our friends are still very much with us.
Let's go back to the issue of the economy and foreign direct investment. It is felt that there is a shift from the west to the east. Now, two things here. Is this true? Now, if it is, there's also some concern about what is regarded as the China influence. With people raising questions about the level of Chinese involvement. Does it amount to a second colonization by China?
Yeah, no, what President Muhammadu Buhari emphasizes is Nigeria first. Everything this government does is because it's been identified as in the best interest of Nigeria. China has risen to be a big global power. There's no doubting that. And and we have, as I said right at the very beginning, a global approach. It's not Africa-centered, it's a global-centered approach to economics and trading and other relations. So China is one of many countries that we trade with. And, if in a particular area we feel that the benefits we will get from China are better, if it's more cost effective for us, say for instance in infrastructure, where the Chinese have really proved themselves globally as, as world leaders in that, then we will go with the Chinese. But there are other areas in the power sector, for instance, where, dealing with Siemens, a German company, which is investing a lot in that area. So it's what they call horses for courses. You go with which particular horses for particular courses, particular countries for, for particular objectives. So I wouldn't say that that is the case. And then also the question of, second colonization of China. I think that's not fair on China, and that's not fair on Nigeria. These are, very often it's not a question of charity. We're paying for these resources. Some people, of course, argue about the level of debt and whatever, but the question of second Chinese colonialism, well, second colonialism, but this time by Chinese, really doesn't arise.
Well, still at that matter, trade, investment, we're looking around the world for where we can get the best deals as it is, but Nigeria has invested in terms of its manpower, its know-how in certain other countries outside its shores. Have those been beneficial when it comes to being involved? Nigeria contributes, for instance, troops to peacekeeping operations in the world. Nigeria has helped sister African countries. But would we say that has translated to Nigeria being recognized in those countries in the way we really would want it to? There are specific examples, but maybe when you talk about this, we'll go specific.
Yeah, well, as far as Africa is concerned, Nigeria is, we've invested a lot in a lot of African countries, and we have also benefited. But we should not be too short-sighted in these things, and also looking at the nature of the benefits. These are long-term relationships, and shouldn't just be seen in terms of instant returns. And and globally, we used to contribute a lot to UN, United Nations peacekeeping, and so forth. And we also subscribe, as again you said at the beginning of the program, in a certain world order, a just world and a stable world. And so we also, if we want that, we also have to contribute. So we play our own role in the framework of the United Nations, the multilateral organizations. And in Africa, we also want a peaceful Africa, and an Africa that we want and that responds to our needs, integrated, harmonious, prosperous. And you also have to invest in that. So I think that our investments have been worth it.
On specific terms, how, for instance, would you rate the relationship with South Africa? How was the issue with South Africa and Nigeria, speaking about xenophobic, how was this xenophobic attack, how was this addressed?
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of things there. In fact, coming back to your first question about the investments that we've made and how we reap from that, I think a good example of that is Southern Africa. Where Nigeria was considered a frontline state during the decolonization there and the ending of apartheid. And, Nigerians here would not understand and appreciate just how high Nigerians are held in those countries. They do remember what we've done for them, which is actually also why so many Nigerians were able to move into those countries as they started off, after decolonization and end of apartheid. You talk about xenophobia. Yes, there is an element of that, but you have to also look at it in context. And if you're taking South Africa particularly, you see the poverty levels of the majority, of people who thought that the ending of apartheid would result in an immediate transformation of their conditions, which did not happen as quickly as they thought, and then they see, foreigners coming in and doing much better than they are. So of course, there's going to be a certain level of envy and so forth that can trigger off these things. So the fault lines of maybe a high level of criminality also that was there. It is a reality that the level of crime was extremely high and is extremely high there. So when you add some of these things, seeing very successful foreigners and some of the foreigners, also Nigerians, competing at a level that they feel they can compete at. So it's not like at a very high, sophisticated technological level. So this also breeds a lot of that. And what I do remind people of sometimes is, when we 30 years ago, also were doing extremely well economically. We also had a lot of these migrants coming from all over Africa into Nigeria, and then you started to get the sort of the envy and all that. And what did you have? A mass expulsion of Ghanaians. Ghana must go and things like that. So these are aspects of human behavior that sometimes provoked by a mix of certain situations.
Speaking of which, could it be said that what's happening now regarding Nigerian traders in Ghana is some sort of reprisal?
No, I wouldn't say it was a direct reprisal. You see, this is it's a question of, a lot of the problems in the world is really about competition for scarce resources, or at least, for resources that are just not there for everybody, and that's what is always going to be, competition for scarce resources. And when you're not winning in that competition, if you have other means that you can leverage on to assert some greater success in that area, you will do so. So if you're in Ghana, you're trading, your traders in the marketplace, Nigerians in Ghanaian markets, and the Nigerians are doing very, very well, may be able to sell at at a lower price or whatever, but in any case are more competitive than what their competitors, Ghanaian competitors, have, is the advantage that that's their country, and that they can influence the authorities to give them the advantage they feel, like passing laws saying that Nigerians now have to invest $1 million before they can open a market, before they can trade, or the new law that they want to bring in, that Nigerians, foreigners cannot trade sell in markets.
Yes, there have been talks towards resolving this, but it would seem that not much has been achieved because it's a recurring problem. So how is the Nigerian government engaging with Ghana, for instance, to resolve this issue? Because Nigerian traders keep crying out.
Yeah, there's each country is sovereign. You start from the premise, and each country can assert its sovereignty within its own territory. So the Ghanaians, we've negotiated with them over time, and in fact there was a delegation that went there just about when was it, about 5-6 weeks ago, to also negotiate with them. And some agreements and concessions have been made. But where we are at the moment is that essentially, the Ghanaians are saying, yes, for those traders who are there already, that they can continue to trade for a certain period of time, but obviously they're moving towards not having foreigners able to trade in Ghanaian markets and so forth. So we're not fully there, but clearly you can see that there's some sort of protectionism that they're pushing towards.
Yeah, well, Minister, there are many bodies, organs, where issues such as this can be resolved. You have the ECOWAS, you have AU, you have other regional setups. Have those not been, very useful in resolving this? I mean, there are so many Nigerians who, well, I'd say, who are outraged that this is happening to the giant of Africa.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah, we're outraged in this, especially because, the whole purpose of ECOWAS was to permit, free movement of goods and persons and allowing, people to trade across the ECOWAS zone. So there are tensions within that arrangement, and these are things that we're arguing and trying to resolve peacefully. We don't want to go, especially, because now you have even the continental African free trade area, which again is supposed to provide that level playing field for all the countries to trade across. But clearly, as we can see, we're not yet there. You're not quite there, and there's still a lot of work. But we're engaging very robustly to that. And when we closed our borders, for instance, because of smuggling and so forth, the same charges were leveled against us. The Ghanaian had a whole line of trucks that couldn't cross in and do business in the country, and ECOWAS got involved, to look at, whether it was something that we could and should be doing. So, to answer your question, the whole issue of total integration, economic integration, is still a work in progress. We've progressed tremendously in ECOWAS. There are a lot of Nigerians in all those countries, Ghana included. There are different sectors, Nigerian banks and other things doing business in all those countries. So there's a lot has been achieved in economic integration, but there's still more that needs to be done. And we've seen that even in economic integration areas that are older than ours. If you take the EU, for instance, they are also having, these cross. It's also a work in progress for them, as we can see. So, but we are robustly defending the interests of Nigerian traders and trying to ensure that they get fair treatment.
Well, Minister, the world of diplomacy might not be one that many citizens are familiar with. So we ask, has Nigeria considered tit-for-tat diplomacy?
Yeah, I mean, yes, of course. Yeah, we've considered it. I mean, it's part of a natural, it's part of a natural process of things. But everything depends on the advantages that you have, the comparative advantages.
So, for instance, how would you respond to those who say, well, if you want to kick out Nigerian traders or set up Herculean targets for them in order to operate, let's do the same and see who's going to blink, who blinks first.
Absolutely. I mean, we discussed, we've looked at all that. We've looked at, the comparative interests and looked at the reciprocal options that we had. And so those have been taken into account. There are those pushing for precisely what you are, suggesting, and but you have to look at everything and put everything in the balance. So for now, the two presidents met and said, no, we want to douse the tension, and we want to go follow the path of dialogue. And so the dialogue is taking place at the moment.
All right, Minister, let's look at the welfare of Nigerians who are in the various countries, the protection of such Nigerians in the diaspora, and the services provided by the Nigerian government through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, of course. And in the past, there were always complaints about how difficult it was to get through to do things in the Nigerian missions abroad. And there were also challenges, and there was at some point some rationalization of missions. What is the situation now, particularly under this government?
Yeah, well, rationalization of missions, yeah, we cut back, on some missions. But what you do realize is that it's very expensive, actually, shutting down missions. It's a bit of a paradox. You think that you're shutting down and you're saving, but it's actually very expensive, paying off local staff and pension rights and so many things. But then also you look at your own global interest. What we're talking about at the very beginning. You want to have a global presence. You want to increase trading opportunities and other relationships with countries. As you yourself said, Nigerians are big travelers and are found all over the world, and you also want to try and support that and leverage on that. So, so it's not as straightforward as just saying close down all your missions and save costs. You're right, there have been a lot of complaints, especially with social media. All kinds of things have been shown on social media, and we are really doing our utmost to try and remind our officers in all these missions that they are first and foremost servants of the Nigerians in diaspora, and are supposed to provide quality service and humane service. And we're working hard at that. What people often don't also realize is that it's not only from the officials of the foreign ministry that are in these missions. You have other MDAs, ministries, departments and agencies that also have their officials in those. The immigration people are actually the ones dealing with the consular services, passports and so forth. But you're right. What we are trying to do concretely in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to address some of these things is to set up a call center. So we're still working on it. It hasn't been as fast as I had wanted it to be. A 24/7 call center, so any Nigerian anywhere is having any issues or with the missions or whatever can call, register a complaint or whatever. And I think it's also good for our officers working there to know that there is some oversight. Of course, they have the ambassadors and those providing oversight, but also to know that, from headquarters. So, and hoping that will also translate into better service and so forth.
Now, the flip side of that is you often hear that the numbers which the missions board can say of Nigerians everywhere is just a fraction, because many are in those countries and they have absolutely no links with the missions, and it's only when there is a problem or a challenge that they show up and expect quick redemption of those issues.
Yeah, this is always the the burden we have to carry. It's a thankless task, and you can never win. And you're absolutely right. There are a lot of Nigerians. In fact, I would even say the majority of Nigerians who go to a country don't even want the mission to know anything about them. We encourage them to go and register at the embassies and so forth, but very often they prefer not to. And as you say, very often it's only when they now get into problems, that they remember that there's a Nigerian mission there, and that they want that mission to solve all the problems for them. But that's what we're there for. That's what we're there for.
On a general level, how easy is it to, one, secure a visa to Nigeria? We have seen where Nigerians are subjected to long queues when they apply for foreign visas, all kinds of discriminations, and those who think, is the same thing happening on the other side? And people get into Nigeria with so much ease. And of course, there were so many critics at the time. In order to promote the ease of doing business, the time, duration for securing visas was drastically reduced, and many Nigerians were not pleased with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's not easy either for foreigners to get visas to come into Nigeria, and I get a lot of requests of Nigerians here who have partners, or invited people or business partners trying to get visas to come into Nigeria, and a lot of them find it just as difficult, and sometimes even more difficult, than Nigerians who are looking for visas into other countries. But yes, it's true. It's difficult for for a lot of Nigerians, trying to get visas to other countries, and we do what we can to encourage and to push those countries to make it less onerous, for Nigerians, and but the demand is just so high. Of Nigerians wanting to, as you yourself said, Nigerians are so well traveled. The demand for visas going out of Nigeria is extremely high also, and and when we try hard to engage with these countries to make it easier for Nigerians.
Irregular migration is a world challenge. How has this been, Nigeria engaging with the international community in order to address this huge problem?
Yeah, it's a real bane for this country, and it's an international problem. We engage. We have agreements with a number of countries on especially returns. When Nigerians are being deported and so forth, and we always push for humane treatment of irregular Nigerians in these countries, and we generally insist that they be given the opportunity to exhaust all the possible rights and remedies that they might have in those countries, and that deportation should be really a very last resort. So, for instance, if somebody has been there for quite some time and is maybe, married, or put down certain kind of roots, to encouraging countries not to take such drastic steps against them. But also, on the other hand, they also want us to, take the responsibility and facilitate the returns of a number of irregular migrants, and sometimes we have no option. We cooperate with various countries to have them back, but we also cooperate with other countries to try and ensure that they don't just come back and then look for another way out. So providing vocational training and other kinds of assistance to them when they come back. But you're right. It's a real problem, and it's reflective of the economic circumstances of the country at the moment, and so there's no single obvious solution, but we do everything we can to prevent, to dissuade Nigerians going on irregular migrations, because that also links into a lot of criminality and human trafficking and so many other things associated with that.
If I might just skip back a little bit, it's believed that there are so many Nigerians, a large number of Nigerians, who are doing time in foreign correctional centers and prisons. And sometimes it's felt as if, well, they are abandoned to their fate. Is it true that the number is huge, and sometimes some of them might not have been afforded proper legal representation, and some have been incarcerated over flimsy reasons, or those that the Nigerian government, the Nigerian state can do something about? For instance, those who are on death row. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, whether you say they're large numbers or not, everything is relative, you know, but there are significant numbers of Nigerians, unfortunately, as you say, in correctional centers, you know, around in various countries around the world. First and foremost, every embassy has a duty to gain access to see these Nigerians and to help them, you know, either with a legal defense and so forth. That's an absolute duty that every embassy that we have has. They need funding for that. Right. You know, sometimes the funding is not what it should be, but they do that. We don't, as a policy or as a practice, abandon Nigerians to their fate in these countries. But as you said, we said at the beginning, you and I, a lot of Nigerians come in there. They don't register in the embassies. The embassies don't know about them. Might not even know that they're in prison. You know, so we encourage Nigerians, but a lot of Nigerians also, because, as you point out, also are irregular, they don't want to be identified and so forth. You know, so you know it's you know, it's a complicated situation, but we try as best we can. We have some, you know, talking about agreements with prisoner transfer agreements with some countries where maybe they could come and serve out their prison sentences here. But of course, we have overcrowded prisons already in Nigeria, so that's not always the most obvious solution, you know. So so it's not easy. And then we advise Nigerians to be law-abiding, you know, when you travel to these countries, and yes, some are on death row as well, but we've been succeeding. In Singapore not too long ago, it was very, very rare for somebody that's been convicted and on death row to get off. But, you know, our mission, engaging with the Singaporeans, were able to have a Nigeria taken off death row. So, you know, we do what we can with the resources we have.
Minister, let's quickly talk about some area which Nigerians have expressed concern about, and that's Nigerians in international organs, international organizations, which global community where Nigeria is a part of. Yes, we have Nigerians in different parts of different areas, but sometimes the challenges of getting such Nigerians into those offices begins to bring out something else. For instance, it took a lot before Dr. Adesina was returned for a second term as president of the African Development Bank. And it seemed as if the opposition was coming from a country that we had agreed was maintaining excellent relations with Nigeria. Again, we look at what happened in the case of Dr. Okonjo-Iweala and how some have described it as the long road to becoming WTO Director General. And there have been other examples where Nigerians have aspired to, you know, positions in international organs, only for them sometimes not to even receive the support of African countries that Nigeria had contributed a lot to, and sometimes from world powers that we say we are friendly with.
Well, you know, in a nutshell, you win some, you lose some, you know. Yeah, you know, it really, all the circumstances have to be right for you. I mean, I don't know what positions necessarily you're talking about in international organizations. you have to, everything just has to be right for you to win, to get the nomination.
We push hard, don't we?
Yeah, you push hard, a good candidate, and so in the case of Additional, for instance, yes, we had to work hard for it. Yeah, because you see, sometimes it's just a question of one or two or three individuals that can actually, determine the fate of somebody in those kinds of situations. So, for instance, if it's a trade organization, the Minister of Trade of one particular country might have a certain opinion. And in the case of, Additional, I think there was one member of the board, from a particular country that was playing hardball. And it happened to be a powerful country, and that's where you got the problem. In the case of Okonjo-Iweala, it was the same thing. It was one individual who pretty much was the one to decide on the policy of a particular country. So
it has started to be the same with even sub-regional bodies, where ordinarily Nigeria should hold sway.
Well, I don't know ordinarily should hold sway, per se, because don't forget, I mean, other countries are also trying to get their candidates in, and it's it's not a given that Nigeria should get every position.
And the big one, of course, and everyone has talked about it, and how the world must work towards making the UN as an organization more reflective of, its composition, and that Nigeria deserves. I mean, this has been on for years. Nigeria deserves a seat,
a permanent seat
on that world body.
Well, I say Africa deserves.
Okay, Africa deserves, but specifically, if it came to determining which African country, we would say, you and I would say Nigeria, of course.
There's a process. There's an ongoing process.
So, have the African nations now pushed enough as to demand equity in such a body as the UN?
Well, the African Union came together and agreed at Ezulwini in Swaziland, the Ezulwini process. And they got a group of 10 countries, a group of 10, C10, championed by Sierra Leone, and to develop a coherence and convergence and a strategy towards that goal. But, like so many other things involving many countries and multilateral framework, it's not very easy, because there are just so many interest groups. Those who already have permanent seats in the UN, they don't want to give them up. And some of them have enemies that look strong in getting those seats, and they would not want them to get it. And within Africa, Africa is pushing for maybe 2 seats at the Security Council. Then you might not get consensus, because who are the 2 countries going to be? So it's I think it's something that's not going to be sorted out soon, and it will suit a lot of the countries that are already there.
Okay. Well, Minister, in 2019, the world was almost brought to its knees, and it's still persistent now by a pandemic. And how has that challenged Nigeria, its policies, its foreign outlook, and its relations with other countries, COVID-19?
Well, it's challenged Nigeria. I mean, it's wrought devastation economically on the country. We're a country that has a large percentage of our people in the informal sector, and so lockdowns are anathema, so it's really battered Nigeria, as it's battered other countries too. How has it affected our relationship with other countries? In many ways, it's strengthened it, because we've seen that there's been solidarity as we've all faced a common challenge, a global challenge. And so in fighting through it, we've all sort of, sought support of each other. And we've had a lot of support from a lot of other countries. I think maybe where now there are some issues, of course, with the vaccines.
Right.
And what they call vaccine nationalism, and some protests that some of the more industrialized countries are hoarding vaccines while the developing countries don't have. So that's probably an issue that I can say that has affected.
There's also the issue of, well, it's been considered in some parts of the world, a vaccine passport. And some countries are already toying with the idea of not recognizing certain other countries, amongst them African countries, who have done the double vaccination, and some parts of the world not recognizing that. This is leading to, some kind of disagreement among countries. How far do you think this is going? Because in the long run, it would amount to restriction of movements of people to other parts of the world.
Yeah, well, yeah. Actually, the situation now, it was actually in respect of AstraZeneca. Although it's, UK produced, but on license, it's produced also in India. And so the EU is pushing towards this vaccine passport, which passport essentially is just saying that you don't need to the PCR. You can come in without a PCR test, into the country. I mean, that's essentially, or without having to, not the PCR test, but without having to, isolate and that kind of thing. But now I understand, and I heard this only today, and I heard it only because we had a meeting with the diplomats on Nigeria's protocols for entry into Nigeria. So it was the Indian vaccine that had not been approved because it hadn't been presented to the body that was approving the vaccines that the EU would accept as for the passport. But I understand that now it has been, the vaccine produced in India has been, and that's the predominant vaccine that we are using in Africa.
All right, Minister, with just a couple of minutes to go, how would you generally assess the foreign policy of this administration, 6 years now, and what do we look at?
Yeah, I think this administration has done very well, foreign policy-wise. When the government came in to office, it was facing a lot of criticism by the international community for many, many things. You remember the girls were the Chibok girls, and then there were all kinds of scandals, 20 billion taken away from the central bank, and so many things. And even with the elections that were coming, and governance issues. So this government has been able to really improve on that in terms of the image of the country and its acceptance by the foreign community, international community. So I think this has owed really to the approach of Mr. President. The African countries, he's reached out to them, and some of the measures he's taken, like the Gambia, promotion of democracy and so forth on the continent, and the global community, his engagement with countries around the world. So what I call the Buhari doctrine has been a triumphant doctrine in foreign affairs.
Well, Minister, it's been interesting talking to you, and we hope you'll come again.
Thank you. Very interesting talking to you too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. And that's our program today. We thank you for watching. Next week we'll be back with One-on-One. I am Cyril Stover, and I say continue to stay safe.